Okay, so I'm back here with Kevin Altieri because a few days after we went live with the Mask of the Phantasm commentary video, Kevin found some more lost Phantasm storyboards that we had to share. So, Kevin, why don't you talk us through it?
Yeah, well, it was like after we were watching the Mask of the Phantasm the other day, that things started to come back to me in my memory.
Mhm.
Like I was looking at the rough boards and I totally forgot that stuff that was cut out, some of it didn't even make it to animation, but stuff that was cut out that I really missed in the final movie, which I think would have been better. And it was for whatever reason the movie was locked to a very hard time. So Eric, and Bruce did have to edit the whole thing down even before the board was done. So there's reasons why the stuff wasn't the scenes weren't there.
Mhm.
But the one thing that I missed was establishing the Joker puttering around the house. But him puttering around the house was him planting explosives all over the place and just being all fussy and stuff and coming up, hi, Hayes, how's it been going? And he comes
Yeah.
home to Hazel and he goes, oh, and he puts this in the oven, which is a big stack of dynamite, which is the trigger. And with the timer, and he's cooking a roast, which is a very Joker thing. And then, of course, that's when Phantasm, Andrea shows up.
Mhm.
That was actually, I thought, really inventive and very well done. And then at the end, when I kind of talked about, and that's the boards that just after I talked about them, I go through a pile of looking for other boards, and just paper and stuff in my flat files. And
Mhm.
all of a sudden, there it was, the scenes that were cut out, where at the end of the jetpack flight, where they crash into the globe, and then in the final movie, they punch out the other side. What actually happens, and I think it was a real loss to the film because it shows the kind of guy that Batman is. Now he says whatever it takes, and he leads to them crashing into the globe.
Mm.
Then they're inside, and I thought it was like a nice touch, and this wasn't really scripted, so another reason why it was probably cut. But I always thought it was a nice touch. There's the Joker. He's knocked senseless. There's Batman. He's bleeding. He's been cut up from before, and he's bashed right through. They're sitting inside the globe, and then you see that the jetpack is on fire, and it's still attached to the Joker. And Batman crawls to the Joker, goes through the trouble of unhooking him, and then just dragging him to safety. you
Yeah.
know, Taking less of his strength, kicking out the backside of the globe and dropping the Joker to safety. And that's what leads the Joker to say his famous line, "For once, I'm stuck without a punchline." The fact that after all this, he's being saved by Batman. And that's
Yeah.
just the kind of noble soul that Batman really is. So I think that, yeah, there's something that's missing, you know, by not having that beat. And people can see the board. And also another thing that I was going to say, when I was watching the animatics while we were doing our Phantasm discussion, um, that Brad had all the rough boards. And if
Mm.
you look at that final board, and Brad was right. He corrected me about, he thought that I did everything in the climax was all me. And I thought that he did a lot of the climax. Actually, seeing that board, Brad was right. I boarded the whole climax and Brad cleaned it up.
Mhm.
And that was like how the entire board for especially for Phantasm was done. It was very polished, very finished
Yeah.
illustration, inked, pretty much inked by the crew. Like a lot
Yeah.
of the stuff I finished myself, especially in the fight in the miniature city, the city of the future, the King Kong Godzilla fight. That was mostly done, inked by me, but it was like we went to a finish. And as a matter of fact, the backgrounds that you see didn't exist. It wasn't like I had a drawing of Miniature City. We made it up, as we went along. So even like when he walks by and you see the little WB on the building, that was part of the whole the whole storyboard more than anything. The Chrysler building, that was an invention in the storyboard, things like that. We weren't handed a bunch of props and following the script.
Yeah, I mean the turnaround time for Mask of the Phantasm was really quick, wasn't it? Because
it was the same schedule. It was the same schedule as the regular show. Exactly.
Amazing. Because it's 3 times as long. Easy.
Yeah. But we put all the crews, I think at that time there was 3 crews. Me, Boyd, and Frank. So yeah, we pretty much that was pretty much the thing. It was like we just put all the crew to work and kept them busy until the series like started up again. We got to pick up for the next season. The all of the layouts were done in house. Which I think, and I think pretty much starting with Mask of the Phantasm, I believe, Mask of the Phantasm was laid out in Korea.
Oh, okay.
So, and because I do remember seeing samples being sent back, is this okay?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And you can see the movie. They did a good job, excellent job. But up to that point, it's like even things like because I was thinking on Leather Wings. I actually saw your broadcast on Leather Wings, and it's like, no, you really good job, Luke.
Thank you. I'm embarrassed again. Thank you.
No, but it's like your commentary is like really, I saw your commentary for Two-Face.
Oh, my favorite episode.
Yeah, and it's like, and that's probably, if people ask me like what's my favorite, that's a really difficult one to answer, but probably Two-Face is where I think it's the best marriage of everything.
I agree.
But part of that is like us doing the layouts early on, like on Leather Wings, the actual animation, the layouts were done by us. So Bruce would actually take a lot of the layouts of just Batman and draw it himself in the layout. So that's why things were so dead on model. And a lot of it, like for instance, the transformation sequence, that was like because we were so unsatisfied with the layouts we were getting from the crew at that time. I ended up drawing that, by myself. The difference is when one of us, me, Dan, or Brad would do the layout ourselves, we wouldn't go and hand it out to a background guy. We wouldn't go and hand out the special effects animation to someone else. We would actually draw the backgrounds and everything ourselves. So actually, that's a lot of the quality that came out was due to that. And just the whole look. Because I remember Brad did all the layouts for the Man-Bat flying through the skyscrapers and stuff.
He didn't tell me that. Yeah,
he did a lot of the layout himself. And like Kurt Gaeta, I gave Kurt Gaeta did the the stuff in the office with where we were introduced to Harvey Dent. Kurt, who wasn't on my crew, but he did for that one. I gave him that back, and he did the layouts all himself, backgrounds and everything. I even animated the helicopter blades.
Oh wow!
So you see the helicopter. It's like I did that layout. I drew the helicopter, that the archaic helicopter, and I animated the chopper blades because I really hate like that wiggly Saturday morning version of a helicopter. So we wanted that actual staccato, realistic look. Yeah, and the same in Two-Face, doing the layouts. A lot of the things I would do, like even though the layout crew is better on Two-Face, there are certain things where I did the layouts myself based on the boards that I did, like inside the psychiatrist's office with the lightning flash and all that stuff. We did that.
Mm.
And every time there's an explosion, I actually animated the explosions in layout. And the machine gun, the machine gun's like shuddering and like the staccato, kind of like I was trying to get like Lupin the Third kind of level machine gun bursts,
Mm.
you know.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason why that one came out as well. Of course, TMS had a lot to do with it, and it's like, oh
Yeah.
my god, I don't think they ever did a show better, including Clayface, like Feet of Clay Part Two. Even that, I just think there's just such subtleties that were in Two Face Part One,
Mm-hmm.
like where Big Bad Harv shows up. I couldn't. I mean, yeah, I did the storyboard, but I couldn't have asked for better facial expressions than
Yeah.
I got.
Yeah, they really got it.
Yeah, it's just the animation going from where Harvey's just sitting there. It's such a subtle bit of animation where he shifts into Big Bad Harv.
Yeah.
And the animators just completely understood it. It's such a good job. I'll take
Yeah.
credit for what we did. I mean, that the last sequence, I've said it before. I think it was one of the fastest boards I remember doing, but it was like the whole hospital sequence at the end where
Mm-hmm.
Harvey, give me a mirror. Once again, the rainstorm and all that. I roughed that out in 15 minutes.
Wow. Oh, that is quick.
Yeah. And then I showed, and Bruce is walking down the hallway and he comes in and I said, hey, Bruce, look at it. And he said, give me that. And he takes the board and then he comes back and he had done that rendered face, when
Yeah.
you're looking at it, when they take the bandages off, he had rendered that thing, like you'll never see the rendering of it. Maybe if I can find that storyboard.
Mm.
It was like he just took a post-it and just like rendered that whole picture. It was just beautiful.
I've
And
actually seen that. It was in the Batman animated book by Chip Kidd
yeah,
and Paul Dini. Yeah, I've
that's
seen
right.
it in there. And it was great. Wonderful.
Yeah. That's what Bruce would do. He'd go and say, give me that. And he'd take it. And then he would ink what he wants. And he would do like
Yeah.
this beautiful, like, he was so quick too. The way he would ink with the flare pen, it was just awesome.
Going back to the layouts, I've got a very small collection of layouts that I've been getting over the last couple of years, and I've got one from What Is Reality? And Dan Reba told me that it was drawn by Dexter Smith, and it's of Commissioner
Yeah.
Gordon when he's tied into the chair, and he's like got a really strained expression on his face. It's an excellent drawing, and it's got all these little notes on there saying, make sure you animate the wrinkles on his eyes and the skin flapping in the wind.
Yeah.
And then when you actually look at the final product, it must have been so disheartening. No offense to anyone involved at the animation studio, but
that happens. It happens all the time. I mean, it's like, but the thing is, if Dan or me or whoever didn't do all of that work, and yes, it comes back, and you say you get 70% instead of 100%.
mm-hmm.
Well, it wouldn't have happened. I mean, it would have been even worse.
Yeah, I suppose so.
It's like Heart of Steel and shows like that would go to Sunrise, and then Sunrise would send them to Jade in China. And Jade was just pushing the envelope. They were giving it everything they had, but everything they had is like, it's like everything's a disappointment.
Yeah.
Every shot's a disappointment, and there's only so many retakes you can call. I mean, there were some shows that I know got smothered with retakes, like I think Heart of Ice really got a lot of retakes. Like, they were very disappointed with what happened with what came back at first.
Mm.
And that one really, but again, that was Bruce's episode. So, he was able to pull assets from different places to get that done.
Mm.
So shows like that actually got fixed.
Yeah, I was going to say that episode turned out really well. It's got some lovely animation in it.
And if you look at a lot of my episodes, even on the DVD, I think there's a lot of retakes. Like, it went on the air without retakes, with a lot of cell dirt and a lot of, like a lot of first takes. And then when I saw the Blu-ray that came out, the retakes are in.
Okay.
So they did eventually get done and did get edited in at some point, but they didn't make it to the air dates. So, and that was another thing too. It was like the show, everyone kind of forgets. We were on a schedule.
Yeah.
You had to meet the deadlines. It's like, otherwise it's like, it's bad.
Yeah, of course. So I guess we talked a lot about, your favorite episode there being, I guess, Two-Face. Is
Yeah.
there an episode that you're really disappointed in that you wish that, they could have just done it again?
Oh my God. Actually, it's like I was thinking, and again, it's not a bad episode. I mean, I'm very pleased with quite a lot of it, but Harlequinade, there's just the Martin bomber at the end,
Mm-hmm.
the aircraft sequence. I just wish there could have been more zing to the aircraft flying. And it takes a certain level of animation, a certain talent to make that work.
Mm.
TMS, of course, can do it, but yeah, it's like things like that. And Heart of Steel, I just wish that went to TMS with the killer robots. And a lot of people love it as it is.
Yeah.
And then ACOM, doing the mechanic.
Oh yeah.
And it's like now, and it's weird that the mechanic came out as good as it did. I'm not going to say it's a bad show, but I'm very disappointed in the animation on that. It's just ACOM can't do vehicles.
Mm.
And I'm like, why are we giving the vehicle show to ACOM?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
And yet kids, like, especially like little kids, will say that that's their favorite episode. So because it's the Penguin, because it's got the Batmobile, so much of Batmobile in it, and I think the idea and the concept just really appeals.
Mm. Yeah. Brad shared the storyboards for that with me, and he did some really impressive shadow work on that. I was looking at it thinking, God, this is so pulpy and noir, and none of that came across in the episode.
No, but if we didn't go to that extreme, in the boards, it would have been that much worse. My attitude's always been like, you always go for the limit. There's things that we had the discussions about, we broadcast standards. And then, for instance, in Man Bat, in On Leather Wings, we got the note that the guy gets thrown, smashes through a window. And they're like, no, you can't do that. And the guys you can't show him thrown to his death. And I said, how do you know it was to his death? And I said, look, he's inside this building with a monster. If we leave him in there, everyone's going to think that he's just been murdered. So he has to be thrown out. And they're going, okay, but make sure he lands in a pool of water or a bush or a tree. So you'll notice that what we did was there's some sort of a sewer way down there. And the guy falls like 3 or 4 stories, 10 stories. So it's actually dramatically it's satisfying. Dramatically it's satisfying when we do show that the guy survives and he's in the hospital in a newspaper clipping. So it's like, so you placate them in intelligent ways that don't, you don't just give in.
And you just reminded me of something there in Off Balance. I assume, what's the guy's name at the top of the statue? Was it Twitch or something like that? He looked like Tim Burton.
Yeah. Yes.
So he gets attacked. He gets knocked over the edge, I think. He presumably falls in the water. And then Batman confronts the League of Shadows members, and they take some gas, and it wipes their minds. Yeah. Presumably, the note was they can't commit suicide, so they've got to wipe their minds, or they've got to do something else. But I think wiping their minds, turning themselves into vegetables, is way worse than having them kill themselves.
Yeah. No, it's just like they're like members of Hydra.
Yeah.
Where they commit suicide, it's the same thing. And BS&P went and said, make sure that we see their eyes open. So he takes the goggles off, and there they are, staring blank-eyed. It's like, which is much more horrifying.
Yeah.
I would say it made them look like they're dead, more so than if we kept the goggles on.
Yeah.
But they insisted we take the goggles off. And I'm like, okay. And then another one is in Two-Face Part 2.
Mm-hmm.
I believe, if my memory serves, I think it was the climax of Two-Face Part 2, where the Mickey Dolans, the twins, the hench twins,
Yeah.
which Mickey Dolenz did the voice for both of them, where Grace says she loves him. They're having that moment and they're about to kiss. And all of a sudden you hear like this thud and you turn around and there's the twins standing in the doorway. Now, BS&P said, make sure that their eyes are open so that we know they're not dead. But there's two dead guys, eyes open, and they fall off camera. It's like, I think it's worse.
Yeah, it definitely is. Absolutely.
And then when Grace jumps in, where Candace is going to brain Batman from behind with a vase, and Grace, I had Grace grab her, and then you cut to Grace, and she just throws a punch, and then you cut to Candace falling down. That was like the meanest broadcast standards note I ever got to my memory, because we're actually on a phone call. You know, I was, because a lot of times it would be a phone call and you'd be taking notes, where it said, you can't have, you know, that's such a nasty thing for a girl to do. You know, it was about it being a female punching you in the face is just so unladylike and nasty. And I'm like, well, okay. I mean, she's got you know, Grace she can't just stand there. Grace really has to, you know, I think it's important that she saves Batman. And then she goes, okay, this is what you have to do. She has to grab her by the hair, swing around and kick her in the butt. And I'm like, oh, no little girl's going to do that. It's like, I thought that was much worse, but
yeah,
I did it. You know, it's like, there it is. So you just want to make things work and keep the entertainment going, and don't like make the audience feel like they've been cheated. You know,
yeah.
Like, oh, good thing that swimming pool is there. You know, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it has become a little bit of a running joke. Whenever anyone falls a great distance, there's a pool or a bush nearby. Don't worry.
Yeah. Although saying that, I actually did that in Batman, the comic I did with Alan Burnett and Paul Dini, the Batman Adventures, season 3, with Harley, which I love doing because I love it's. Again, thank you, Paul. Thank you, Alan, for giving me the Batman Harley team up again. But Harley does leap from the helicopter where they're shooting at her, and she aims for a pool.
Yeah. It was being consistent.
Yeah, it's like, but it's like she actually dives into the pool in that. So it still happens, but I think it was much more entertaining the way we did in the comic than it just suddenly being there, and you know, it wasn't forced. It was kind of fun, especially since the guys in the helicopter then dropped a hand grenade into the pool.
So, yeah, that was a good one. Really quick question. Hopefully you know the answer to it. So in Two-Face Part 2, right, there's a scene where Harvey Dent's looking at a picture of Grace in his wallet. And you can see he's got a credit card in the name of Two-Face. That bit always cracks me up. Whose idea was that? Who do I have to thank for that?
God, I don't remember. That might have been that sounds like something like I think I drew that sequence. I'm not sure. You know, I think I drew it, but it was more like something where we were all sitting around, and when we're handing out the board, you know, we're talking about what we're going to do. So I think there was probably a group, you know, me, Dan, and Brad probably.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I think that's amazing. I just love picturing how he got that credit card. You know, he goes into the bank and he's like, my name is Two-Face now.
Yeah.
And they just did it. No questions asked.
Well, it's the same thing with like at the end of The Mechanic, where we have the Penguin in prison, and he gets, you know, one bat for you.
Yeah.
You know? Well, I did go and say to the prop guy, I did put the Dark Deco state on.
Yeah, I like that.
So there's things like that happen all the time. It generally is a spontaneous storyboard thing. Yeah. Although other people will take credit, but yeah.
Well, it's well deserved. I mean, it's something, since I've been doing like more research into the making of BTAS and speaking to people that worked on it, it's abundantly clear that it was a group effort. People always say, oh, it's the Timverse, or, you know, oh, it's Bruce Timm and Paul Dini that did this. And, you know, not to downplay their contributions, because obviously they made massive contributions. But it was all of you. You all contributed to it. It would not have been the same show without
No.
with some of you dropping out, it wouldn't have been the same show. Just look at the new Batman adventures. You weren't there. Eric Radomski wasn't there. Ted Blackman wasn't there. Completely different show.
Oh, yeah.
It just wasn't the same, Like
No.
Gotham City actually felt like a character in BTAS, and you'd have all these episodes where they just do these slow pans across Gotham City showing what a decrepit, rundown place it was. And it's just wonderful.
No, there's a ton of people working on it. How many animators? I don't know. I don't even know who the animators were that did specific scenes.
Yeah.
But you got to give them credit. It's like, they've contributed so much.
Absolutely.
And just that's part of the reason why I really want to do these, is to give, it's not to go and say, well, you'll notice like me and Dan, we're trying to remember who did what on Mask of the Phantasm as we're watching. It's not, well, look what I did.
Yeah, that really struck me. And it's such a shame that some of these people are no longer with us, and they're just not getting credited at all. Nobody knows. Like, most people probably don't know who Joe Denton is, right? Or was, I should say.
Yeah.
But based on what you've told me, he made some really significant contributions.
Oh, yeah. No, he was like an essential part of the crew.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like in Showdown, like I'm into history, and I have history books, and I'm just obsessed with history and things like that. And Joe would come in after he's gone away for a weekend, with his wife, and he'd come in with pictures, and he'd come in and he'd say, hey, what do you think? And he'd show pictures, and there he is, hat, 6 shooters, bandolier, hey, we went to Arizona last weekend, and they would go to like these Wild West things, and he would do a recreation stuff, and he would do Civil War recreations, go to those events. And so, when I came in with this, it's like, I didn't even ask him to do props. I just told him what we were doing, and then here's an ink drawing. Yeah. Anyway, let's see the storyboards. And I actually added a sign that I added in the backgrounds, where if you see the final show, there's like as the town's getting bombarded, there's a sign of like some business, Denton's Inks.
Yeah.
And I added that as like a last minute thing, just to give him a little bit of credit, so that he's immortalized a bit.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I love the little references like that. Like when what was it in Phantasm when Batman's shuffling through the papers? Was it like Wallace Press or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, Mark Wallace did that himself, though.
Yeah.
That was his section. Yeah. Yeah, there's another guy too. He was a character, a prop guy from Deke. So, and he ended up on my crew. He did things that well, like in that sequence in Mask of the Phantasm, he would do surprising things. The animators would actually, for his stuff, for my stuff, for Mike Gogan's, quite often you'd see that the character, like at the end of Harley's Holiday, for instance, with Veronica Vreeland and Harley in the Bruce Wayne's car where they're driving off over the bridge just before Dad shows up with the tank.
Yeah.
Looks like I drew it, Harley's slightly off model, and the animation is wonderful. I think I couldn't ask for better. But when Mark Wallace would do a sequence, his stuff would be just off model. That would make the animators go and reference the model pack. So suddenly in his sections, everything's dead on model.
Interesting.
So it totally works. So it's like, it's give and take. Like I gave him the section where Ra's al Ghul is in the Lazarus pit. And he did that whole swirling vortex thing, and where Ra's al Ghul's face comes up spewing flames.
Yeah, with the glowing red eyes.
Yeah, it's like
great.
He totally invented all that. And it's like, and that's like that was just like a weird thing. And I went like, I don't know if I should put this in. I don't even know how to do this, but I kept it. But and they did a great job with that bit.
Yeah, I was just going to say as well that there's so much stuff that some of my favorite scenes from BTAS. I've seen that they came from Brad Rader's work. Now, presumably, you obviously gave him some instruction and gave him feedback on it, but so much of it seems to have come from him, and it's just I'd been oblivious for years, and it's almost like, you know, scales falling off my eyes. I'm like, oh my god,
yeah, well,
so obvious now.
Yeah, well, Brad was there from the very beginning. He was the backbone of my crew. You know, it was true. It was true at Deke, but it was even more true on Batman. And the thing about Brad was that he really liked doing just the talking head stuff. And if I gave Brad just a conversation, he will take it and do it dramatically. Like in Feet of Clay, Part 2, I gave him all the gay relationship stuff.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh man, this reminds me of my college boyfriend. And I'm like, oh Jesus, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but I was looking at his storyboards. I've made an animatic for the Feet of Clay boards recently, and there's just like one bit where Clayface is like sat looking in the mirror, feeling all forlorn, and Teddy puts his hand on his shoulder, and just this little subtle thing. If he looks at his hand, there's a bit of like clay residue on it, and just wipes it off on his trousers. Just this little, just natural bit of acting. And I'd never really noticed it before until I looked at the boards and I looked at the episodes. Like, oh my god, yeah, it's just so much above and beyond what you normally see. Yeah.
No, and like in the animatics that you had, what you put together, there are like a lot of extra poses that are done in the margins and stuff.
Yeah.
Too. Like just indicating like all of the acting beats.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your generosity with the storyboards. I love seeing them, and I know there are hundreds of people that love seeing them.